If love were a crime, then I guess my heart was already guilty before the curtain even rose. The funny part? I didn't even audition for this play. I got dragged into it like a bad joke, only to realize that the joke was on me. It started in the crowded hallway of Jefferson University's theater department, where my best friend had foolishly signed me up as a volunteer to help with the upcoming production. I was a biology major, not some aspiring Broadway star. My stage experience amounted to high school presentations where I spoke too fast and stared at the floor. But fady, if you want to call it, that has a twisted sense of humor. That's how I ended up standing under the harsh fluorescent lights, script in hand, facing the theater's golden boy, Adrian Hayes. Adrian wasn't just another student. He was the kind of guy everyone noticed the moment he walked into a room. Blonde hair that caught the sun like it had been brushed with gold, sharp cheekbones softened by an easy smile, and a confidence that seemed unfair in someone barely 20. He was the lead actor in almost every college production, the kind of name whispered in campus coffee shops with both admiration and envy. And me? I was the nobody, the biology nerd who sat in the back row of lectures, memorizing DNA sequences instead of Shakespearean monologues. "Hey," Adrian said, flashing that smile that probably won him half the audience before he even delivered a line. "You're Noah, right? They said you'd be reading with me." My throat went dry. Yeah. "But just so you know, I'm not an actor." "Don't worry," he said, leaning a little closer, like this was a secret only between us. "Just follow my lead." And that's when it happened, the first flicker of something I couldn't explain. The way his eyes locked on mine, as if he saw right through every layer I'd built to keep the world out. It wasn't just eye contact. It was something electric, unsettling, like a whisper against the spine. The script was supposed to be a simple rehearsal of Act 1. Nothing serious. But when Adrian delivered his lines, every word carried weight. And when my turn came, I stumbled. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I couldn't stop hearing the unspoken message in his gaze. His character's longing didn't feel like acting, it felt personal. It felt like he was reaching for me, Noah Miller, not the faceless role written on the page. The director clapped her hands together. "Perfect. I think we've found our chemistry." Chemistry. Yeah, that word hurt more than it should. Because the truth? I wasn't supposed to feel this way. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where people talked behind their hands and churches preached louder than the truth. Boys like me weren't supposed to notice the curve of another boy's smile or the way his hand lingered a second too long on my shoulder. Boys like me were supposed to hide, blend, survive. So why did my heart feel like it was betraying me every time Adrian's blue eyes lingered on mine? Still, I told myself it was just acting, just lines on a page, until rehearsal ended and Adrian stopped me on the way out. "You were great in there," he said. I laughed, nervous. "Yeah, right. I forgot half the lines." "That's the thing," he replied. "It didn't feel like you forgot. Felt real. Like you weren't acting." He didn't know how close he was to the truth. That night, lying awake in my dorm room, I replayed his words over and over. Real. Not acting. And for the first time, I wondered if the danger wasn't in stepping onto that stage, but in what I might discover once the curtain fell. The next week was a blur of rehearsals. Somehow, Adrian and I kept getting paired for the most intense scenes, the ones where characters confessed secrets, argued like their lives depended on it, or stood on the edge of admitting something neither dared to say. Every time, Adrian gave everything, and every time I found myself responding without meaning to. It wasn't just the stage anymore. In the green room, he'd sit next to me, close enough that our knees touched. During breaks, he'd ask about my life outside the theater, and I'd find myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone else, about my mom working double shifts back home, about how I never felt like I belonged, about the suffocating silence I carried everywhere. Adrian listened like every word mattered. And then came the moment that changed everything. We were rehearsing a scene where our characters had to stand inches apart, speaking lines that dripped with unspoken desire. The director was shouting from the seats, "Closer! Closer! We need to feel the tension." So we moved closer. Too close. I could feel his breath against my lips. My hands trembled where the script should have been, and suddenly, There was no audience, no stage, no play. Just him. His eyes flickered, uncertain for the first time since I'd met him. And then, the smallest smile curved at the corner of his mouth as if he knew. I almost kissed him. Almost. But I pulled back, choking on the fear that had been drilled into me since childhood. Fear of being seen. Fear of being known. Adrian's smile faded, replaced by something else, something softer, almost wounded. But he didn't push. He just whispered his next line like it was meant only for me. That night, I hated myself for pulling away, because the truth I couldn't deny anymore was this. The stage wasn't the only place where I was acting. And Adrian Hayes? He was the one person who could see through the performance. By the end of the first month, whispers had started. The theater department wasn't blind. People noticed the way Adrian's eyes lingered too long, the way my responses came too easily. In the cafeteria, I overheard girls giggling about those two in the play, and my stomach twisted. Because in their laughter, I heard the danger. Adrian didn't seem to care. He walked with me across campus like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sometimes, when no one was looking, he'd bump his shoulder against mine, a silent rebellion against the world's judgment. But me, I cared too much. Every shadow felt like an accusation. Every glance felt like a threat. One evening, after rehearsal, I tried to put distance between us. Adrian, I said, voice breaking, we should keep this professional. Just the play. He stared at me for a long time. Then, quietly, he asked, is that what you really want? I opened my mouth to say yes, but the words stuck in my throat, heavy as stone, because the truth was simple, cruel, undeniable. No, I didn't want to let go, and that realization terrified me more than anything. Adrian didn't press me for an answer that night, but the question hung between us like smoke clinging, inescapable. Every rehearsal after that felt different, heavier, as if he knew I was trying to run from something I didn't dare name. One Thursday evening, the director paired us for a late rehearsal. The auditorium was almost empty, just the two of us on stage with the faint hum of the lights above. I could hear my heartbeat echo louder than my footsteps. The scene we were practicing was about betrayal, about a love that couldn't survive the weight of the world. Why won't you say it? Adrian's voice thundered through the empty seats, but his eyes were fixed on me, begging, raw. I swallowed hard, forcing the line out. Because saying it makes it real. His jaw tightened. For a moment I forgot the script. It was him, his frustration, his pain. Exactly, he whispered, stepping closer. Maybe that's the point. The line wasn't in the script. He had gone off book. My breath caught. The space between us vanished. And then he did something reckless, something I dreamed of and feared all at once. He reached for my hand. His fingers brushed against mine, tentative, searching, like he was asking permission to rewrite everything we'd been pretending not to feel. My skin burned where we touched, a spark that made the stage lights dim in comparison. I should have pulled away. I didn't. The director's voice snapped from the back row, breaking the spell. Excellent. That's exactly the intensity this scene needs. Keep it. I yanked my hand back like I'd been caught stealing. My chest heaved with panic and something far more dangerous. Because the truth was, I didn't want to let go. The days blurred together after that. Whispers grew louder in the theater halls. A couple of guys from the crew made jokes under their breath, and though Adrian brushed them off with his trademark charm, I could feel the walls closing in. One afternoon, I walked into the cafeteria and froze. On the far side of the room, Adrian was sitting with his friends, laughing easily. And then I noticed the way his gaze flicked up, searching the crowd until it landed on me. He held it, just long enough for my chest to tighten, then looked away like nothing had happened. I grabbed a tray, pretended to be invisible, and sat at the far end of the room. But invisibility didn't save me from the whispers that trailed behind. Those two. Did you see how close they were at rehearsal? Bet they're more than just scene partners. Heat crawled up my neck. Shame, fear, longing, they tangled together until I couldn't breathe. That night, Adrian cornered me outside the library. Noah, he said, voice low but firm. Why are you avoiding me? I glanced around, paranoid. I'm not, you are. He stepped closer, shadows hiding us from the world. Did I do something wrong? God, he sounded almost hurt. No, I whispered. It's me. I can't afford this. This? His eyes searched mine, furious and tender all at once. You mean us? There is no us. The words came out harsher than I meant, but if I softened them, I was afraid I'd break. Adrian flinched like I'd struck him. He shoved his hands into his pockets, jaw tight. You can lie to everyone else, Noah, but don't lie to me. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me stranded in the quiet night with nothing but the echo of his footsteps and the ache in my chest. The premiere of the play loomed closer, and with it my panic grew. Dress rehearsals became torture. The scenes demanded closeness, intimacy, tension we couldn't fake anymore. Every time Adrian touched Mayweather, it was a hand on my arm. A look held too long felt the world tilt off its axis. On opening night, the auditorium buzzed with anticipation. The house was full. Students, faculty, even people from town. My stomach churned with dread. Backstage, Adrian found me pacing. He reached out, steadying me with a hand on my shoulder. Hey, he said softly. We've got this. I wanted to believe him. When the curtain rose, something shifted. The stage lights blinded me to the audience, and for the first time it was just us. Just two boys caught in a story too close to our own. Scene after scene, the lines blurred. His words cut deeper than the script intended. My responses cracked with truths I hadn't meant to reveal. And then came the final scene. We stood inches apart, the moment the entire play had been building toward. My character was supposed to confess love he could never speak, then walk away. Adrian's eyes locked onto mine, shimmering under the lights. He delivered his line pleading, raw, and suddenly, I wasn't acting anymore. The silence stretched. The script screamed in my mind. Say the line, turn away, leave him. But I couldn't. Instead, I whispered, barely audible, I'm tired of pretending. It wasn't the line. Adrian's breath caught. His lips parted. And then before fear could stop, May stepped forward. Our lips met. Gasps rippled through the audience, but I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't acting. I wasn't hiding. The kiss was brief, trembling, desperate. But it was real. When I pulled back, the stage was silent except for the thundering of my own heartbeat. Adrian's smile was small, radiant. Everything I'd been afraid of and everything I'd ever wanted. The curtain fell. And the world, for one fragile moment, didn't matter. But the world didn't stay silent for long. By the next morning, whispers had turned into shouts. Posts circulated online. Blurry photos of us on stage, comments ranging from heart emojis to cruel words that made my stomach knot. Some classmates looked at me with admiration, others with disgust. And my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Saw a picture of you on Facebook. We need to talk. I stared at the screen until the words blurred, because I knew the hardest scene of my life wasn't on stage. It was the one waiting for me at home. The message from my mom haunted me all day. It sat there on my phone screen like a weight, daring me to respond. Every time I opened the text, my chest tightened. I imagined her voice sharp, disappointed, echoing the sermons of the church back home. Adrian noticed. Of course, he did. During rehearsal the next afternoon, I stumbled over my lines 3 times in a row. Finally, Adrian grabbed my script and tossed it onto a chair. Talk to me. What's going on? I shook my head. Nothing. Just tired. He narrowed his eyes. Noah, you kissed me on stage in front of 100 people, and now you're acting like the world is ending. What happened? I exhaled, defeated. My mom saw. She wants to talk. Silence. For once, Adrian didn't have an easy smile or quick comeback. He just studied me, his expression softening. Are you scared? Yes, I admitted. My voice cracked on the word. She doesn't know. No one back home does. If she tells my dad. I didn't finish the thought. I didn't need to. Adrian reached out, his fingers brushing mine. You don't have to go through it alone. Something inside me ached with longing. I wanted to believe him, but some things you couldn't share, not even with the person who made you feel alive. 2 days later, I took the bus home. The ride stretched on forever, cornfields blurring into an endless green-gray horizon. By the time I stepped off at the familiar cracked sidewalk of my hometown, my stomach was in knots. Mom was waiting at the door, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes unreadable. Inside, the kitchen smelled like coffee and fried chicken, but the comfort of home did nothing to ease the tension. She sat across from me at the table, folding her hands like she was about to pray. Noah, she began, voice carefully steady. I saw the photos. I swallowed hard. Yeah. She hesitated. Was it real? Or just acting? The question sliced through me. For a second, I almost lied. It would have been so easy to nod, to say it was all part of the performance. But then I remembered Adrian's eyes on stage, the truth in his kiss, and I couldn't betray that. It was real, I whispered. Her shoulders stiffened. She looked away, blinking fast, like she was trying to keep her emotions in check. You know what people will say. Your father, Dad doesn't have to know. I cut in, desperation sharpening my tone. Please, Mom, I can't keep pretending. Tears welled in her eyes. She looked at me, torn between love and fear, and for the first time, I saw how heavy her silence had been all these years. I don't want your life to be harder than it already is, she said quietly. But I can't change who your father is, or this town. The weight of her words pressed down on me. I wanted her acceptance, her blessing. Instead, all I had was quiet resignation. When I left the next morning, her hug lingered just a little too long, like she was trying to protect me with something as fragile as her arms. Back at Jefferson, Adrian was waiting outside my dorm. He didn't ask how it won, they just read it on my face. Not great, he said softly. I shook my head. She knows. She won't say it out loud, but I could see it in her eyes. She's scared for me, scared of what people will think. Adrian's jaw tightened. Then let them think whatever they want. Screw them. It's not that simple, I muttered. Yes, it is, he said more fiercely than I expected. You get one life, Noah. One. And you deserve to live it without apologizing for who you are. The conviction in his voice both comforted and terrified me. Because part of me still believed the opposite, that I didn't deserve happiness. Not if it meant disappointing the people I loved. But Adrian, he looked at me like happiness was my birthright. The play's run continued, and with every performance, the kiss became more than just a scripted moment. It was ours. The audience felt it, whispered about it, dissected it on campus forums. Some cheered us on. Others sneered. I learned to live in that in-between space. Adored and condemned, free and trapped. One night after a show, Adrian pulled me into the empty dressing room. His face was flushed, his chest rising and falling from the adrenaline of the performance. Noah, he said, voice trembling. I can't keep pretending this is just the play. I froze. I like you, he continued. Not as a character, not as a scene partner. You, all of you. And I know you're scared, but I can't keep waiting for you to admit what's already there. The words hit me like a storm. I wanted to say them back, to give him the certainty he deserved. But fear clawed at me, a lifetime of warnings and whispers holding me captive. I don't know if I can, I stammered. Adrian's face fell, but he didn't look away. Then let me help you. Let me show you it's worth it. And before I could stop myself, I kissed him. It wasn't like the stage. It wasn't trembling or tentative. It was real, raw, desperate, everything I'd been holding back. When we broke apart, both of us breathless, Adrian smiled against my lips. There you are. But love stories aren't written without conflict. A week later, as we walked across campus, a group of guys shouted slurs at us from the quad. My body went rigid, shame flooding through me like poison. Adrian turned toward them, ready to fire back, but I grabbed his arm. Don't, I begged. He looked at me, fury blazing in his eyes. Why not? Because they'll just make it worse. They already made it worse, he snapped. I couldn't answer. My silence was an old habit, a survival mechanism I hadn't yet learned how to unlearn. Adrian shook his head, disappointment written across his face. You can't keep hiding, Noah. Not if you want this. Not if you want me. The ultimatum hung in the air, terrifying and true. That night, lying awake in my dorm, I realized something. The real choice wasn't between safety and danger. It was between living half a life or daring to live a whole one. And maybe, just maybe, Adrian was worth the risk. The days after the confrontation on the quad were the hardest. Adrian grew restless, frustrated, unable to understand how I could still shrink back into shadows while he was ready to stand in the sun. We didn't break up, we weren't even officially together, but silence started to carve space between us. One night after rehearsal, he didn't wait for me. He left the theater without a word, his script tossed carelessly into his bag. Watching him walk away felt like losing air. I realized then, silence wasn't safety anymore. It was loss. A week later, the theater department hosted a closing night party. Music pulsed from speakers, students crowded into the auditorium lobby with red plastic cups, laughing, hugging, celebrating the success of the show. Adrian stood across the room, laughing too but not with me. I hesitated by the punch bowl, clutching my cup like a lifeline. Then I saw it. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged when no one was watching. He was hurting, and I was the reason. Something inside me snapped. I set my cup down and pushed through the crowd. Conversations blurred. Music throbbed. My heartbeat drowned everything else. When I reached him, I didn't ask permission. I just grabbed his hand. The room fell into silence. Eyes turned. Whispers started. Adrian's eyes widened in shock. Noah, but I didn't let go. For once, I didn't care. I'm done hiding, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My voice shook, but the truth steadied me. I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't care what they say. I care about you. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but it didn't matter, because Adrian's expression softened into something radiant, something that made my knees weak. He squeezed my hand, grounding me. You sure about this? He whispered. Yes, I breathed. For the first time in my life, yes. And then, in front of everyone, I kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or perfect. It was messy, clumsy, desperate. But it was ours. The room erupted cheers, whistles, a few murmurs of disapproval, but I didn't hear any of it. All I felt was Adrian's hand in mine, his lips against mine, his warmth anchoring me in a storm I no longer feared. The days that followed weren't easy. Online posts multiplied, both cruel and kind. Some friends stopped talking to me. Others surprised me with support. Professors pulled me aside, some with encouragement, some with thinly veiled concern. My mom called again. This time her voice was softer. I saw what you did, she said. I don't understand it all, Noah, but I saw your face. I haven't seen you that happy in years. Tears blurred my vision. Does that mean? It means, she said, her voice breaking, that I love you, and I'm trying. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Adrian and I found a rhythm after that, not perfect, not without fear, but real. We studied together in the library, his hand sometimes brushing mine beneath the table. We walked across campus, not flinching when people stared. We sat on the stage after everyone left, the ghost light casting long shadows, and whispered about dreams that suddenly felt possible. One evening, as we sat in the empty theater, Adrian turned to me. Do you regret it? Regret what? Choosing this. Choosing me. Even with everything. I looked at him, at the boy who had pulled me out of hiding, who had seen me when I wanted to disappear, and I smiled. Not for a second. He leaned his head against my shoulder, and for the first time the silence felt safe. Spring arrived, and with it, a new play was announced. This time I auditioned on purpose. Not because I wanted the spotlight, but because I wanted to stand beside Adrian again. No script dictating my truth. When my name was called at the cast list, Adrian grinned like a fool. "Guess you're officially one of us now." "Guess so," I said, and kissed him right there in the hallway, without fear. Life didn't magically become easy. There were still whispers, still stares, still moments where fear tried to claw back in. But there was also laughter, and late-night rehearsals, and quiet mornings where Adrian's hand found mine as naturally as breathing. And maybe that was the point. Not perfection, not the absence of fear, but the courage to choose love anyway. Because once upon a time, I thought the stage was a place for pretending. But with Adrian, I learned it was the only place I ever stopped pretending. And that, more than anything, made my heart race. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.